Having a Gas is the podcast that talks to the great and the good of the creative industries, and in particular finds out what makes great music for film, for TV, for commercials, for dancing to, for cooking to, for f***ing to, and more. Today I'm having a gas with Grant Hunter, the Global Exec Creative Director at Iris Worldwide. And Iris made headlines last year with a number of pieces of creative work that were led by brand purpose, including Starbucks, The Great Reset, and the NHS. There we go. Okay, so it's actually recording this time.
Look at that. Right there, confirmed.
Yes.
We are live.
Yeah, because I think we did about a whole hour last time and then, didn't record. So, yes.
It's a good gas though, wasn't it?
It was cracking, yeah, and it lives on only in my memory, but and hopefully yours as well.
How long ago was it? It must have been...
middle of June.
June. Crikey. I think my hair's starting to go the same way as it was back then, in terms of needing a desperate commit. But
yeah. Has there been what's the last 6 months been like? Because obviously, for your role is slightly different to the people I traditionally speak to, insofar as your title is global, and so the implications of that are a little bit different. But yeah, just. In brief, what I know that you said there was a bit of going back to the office in September and then coming back out of the office and then another lockdown. Just give me an overview of what things have been like since the summer.
Yeah, I think it's like most places trying to make sense of the ever-changing guidelines. But like everyone, Zoom, Teams, video chat has become the new normal. I think I've been quite surprised by how well that has gone. I think it does slow down the creative process in terms of the little chance conversations you have in the office, where you can check in and knock stuff around. I think some of our conceptual teams have found that tough at times. Others, in terms of writers, I think have quite enjoyed being able to get their head down at home and get a bit of peace and focus on the work. But it's amazing how the technology's worked. We've used platforms like Miro, which allow you to do virtual post-it brainstorms with clients. And we had a series of COVID sprints, when lockdown first started, where we scrambled really quickly with our planning strategy faculty guys and getting clients together. And we had stuff where we were working with our Starbucks clients over in South America, along with our European sort of day-to-day clients, to help them make sense of the ever-changing landscape. So that was super useful. And then I suppose as time's gone on, it just becomes more of a balance. And ideally what we wanted to do was get to 2 days in the office, 3 days from home, and then the second lockdown happened. So we were just about to go, right, from the 1st of October, have a department day in the building. So again, you get that sense of team. And then the other day in the building is up to you when you use it. Just work out when you want to see certain people, working on certain projects, and the 3 days work from home. And that kind of balance felt kind of good. And I think as we go into next year, that flexible working will be a big part of how we operate going forward.
Yeah, so is that, probably just answered this, but is that what it looks like is going to be happening? Let's be ambitious and say May, June, maybe trying to roll it out again.
Yeah, hopefully, but I'm sure January, February will probably be a little bit more restricted as we start to get into the spring. Hopefully, there's enough freedom there and it's safe to encourage people to get into the office. Because I think for our creative kind of sense of well-being, I think it's important that people are together, and the office plays such a big part of our identity. It builds our culture. But like anything, it's balance. And I think the fact that people now can work from home and don't feel guilty about it, the amount of time people spend with their family and seeing the kids, that's been a big benefit for me, in terms of seeing them every morning and bedtime and story time. That's really precious time. So that's a massive upside of COVID. So I want to make sure we keep that balance. Also, playing with core hours, encouraging people to not necessarily do the early morning commute, but get in and work between 10 and 4. That's another staple of the way we work.
So what does managing or supervising creative teams internationally, what does that do to your schedule? Because you were talking about core hours, but core hours here are different than in New York, San Francisco, South America, etc. How do you manage the clock?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the other benefit of the video sort of link up play. Now the network feels a lot smaller. We were always pretty tight because we've been good over the years of moving people around different offices. So there's always someone who knows the London mothership. It's all very much based on relationship. But I think the people who come into those offices who maybe haven't been in London or been to the main office now feel more connected to it. Whether it's through the weekly sessions, we run a number of listening circles around different issues from mental health to equality, diversity, to the environment, but also on major projects. We've been able to scramble, and we're doing a lot of work with the US teams, so helping the guys in Chicago and Atlanta, also in San Francisco. Working with London teams, with planners based over in the States. It does mean you start slightly later in the day and go later at night, and that can be tricky if you're working on London European work as well as the US work, because you can be almost doing a double day, But you have to try to get that balance right, so you give people permission to start a little bit later if you're working on US hours. At times, it has been a real crunch. People have been putting long hours in. And I think at the start, people were worried about job security, understandably. So people didn't want to be seen to be letting anyone down. And so no one was saying no. I think people were just taking on everything. And I think we've got to that point where we go, look, you've got to take time out. Just getting people to take holiday. It's also been a challenge, because I think because you're not physically going anywhere, you kind of go, well, that's not really a holiday, is it? But just taking time off Zoom is a break. You need to do it.
Yeah, that was that was one of the things that I didn't see coming, but like you said, just lack of holiday time, because I imagine there's almost like a psychological thing of thinking, well, I'll take all of my holidays from this year when I can travel again and kind of build them up. But yeah, I certainly, I remember the guys at the upper management at Pixar saying one of the problems we have is people working too much, and we have to kind of pull them back a little bit. And certainly, like you say, you're working on clients in the US and abroad. I can 100% imagine, like you said, you can accidentally do a double day. You do a European day, and then you go until about 1 a.m, or later. And so, is that, as the global ECD, is it your responsibility to make sure that people aren't over, burning out?
Yeah, I think it's trying to make sure that you can let people know it's okay to say that, put your hand up and go, look, this is too much. And then, either bring in support from other teams or ask for more time or bring freelance support in to help on those occasions. But I think that's the biggest thing. How do you get in and really understand how people are feeling when you're not meeting face to face? It's amazing all those non-verbal things you pick up when you just see people in and around the office.
Yeah.
On Zoom and Teams, maybe it's a bit harder to really go, are you really okay? Are you just putting that facade on? So I think it's asking the questions and just keeping an eye out. And even though they might not tell me, they might tell someone else, and making sure it feels like those other people are supporting and can reach out if someone is really struggling.
That's it's good that there's so much care being taken about employees' well-being. I think, I don't know, I feel like that has become a much more prominent issue on the agenda in the last 3 to 5 years. And I think it's good that conversation is, going in that direction. But another conversation that has taken the lead is obviously the issue of climate change. I mean, it always was an issue, and even as long ago as, it's not that long ago, but when I was in school, it was, being taught in geography and stuff like that. So I feel like we may be the first generation that were kind of aware of it from day one, hence why it's becoming such an issue for marketeers, because, the generation with consumer power, people my age, are about to come into affluence. So it's useful to appeal to them. But you and the Purpose Disruptors were at the forefront of a big push on that over the summer. And so what I hoped you might do is, for the benefit of anyone listening or watching who hasn't seen it, explain what the intention of the Great Reset is and what the purpose of that project is.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, the Purpose Disruptors are an amazing community of creatives and advertising marketing professionals, set up by a few guys. Jonathan, Lisa and Rob founded it along with a number of others. And I think it started down at a pub. And it's basically people who really care about the environment and realised that we've got so much influence, but we don't really always appreciate that power. And I think lots of creatives have that urge, that need to create something which has real kind of purpose. And there's obviously also this kind of tension between the things we are selling often, you know. So the Great Reset is really a call to arms to say, actually, during lockdown, we've seen amazing kind of reset for what we live and the impact our behaviour has on the planet. So I think already there's a 7% reduction in carbon emissions due to lockdown. You know, not travelling as much, not flying as much, even the food we're eating, the choices we're making. So cycling more, walking more. Also general well-being in terms of looking out for one another. There's more community spirit. So that's what the Great Reset sets out to do. And you guys obviously helped us on the music for the launch film, which we launched a good few months ago. I think there's something like 1,400 contributors now to that community. We launched the film. There's then a brief with D&AD to actually create advertising across channel, which would encourage people to retain those lockdown behaviours. So there were 7 winning ideas from 7 different teams. And again, it was all about collaboration. You know, even though there were winners, it was about the collaborative effort of that community to fill those media spaces. So through radio, through digital spaces on WeTransfer, through outdoor sites across the country. A number of these pieces went out over a 3-4 week period. I think Campaign have just featured it actually this week as one of the standout pieces this year in terms of social change and really helping raise awareness. But I think this is just the start. So check out thegreatreset.com. Look at the Purpose Disruptors and get involved, because virtual meetups happen every couple of weeks and they're constantly looking for more people to join and spread the message.
I think that's why I was quite taken by the idea, because I think fundamentally I appreciate proactivism, which is to say that I like it when there's an urgency to actually do something as opposed to merely talk about the problem and wait for someone else to do something. And like you said, it was a moment when people in our industry realized that we actually could, affect some change as opposed to waiting for our brand clients to make all of those moves at some point in the future, or wait for government regulations to come in at some point in the future. So I was quite happy about that. And one of the things that struck me about lockdown, because you were talking about the reduction in emissions due to the fact that we weren't traveling at all, is it was kind of like the impossible experiment. It was always something that you might think about. What would it actually take to stop air pollution? How would you stop everyone driving all at once? And then we found it. So it's one of those moments where a crisis became an opportunity. What do you think is going to happen on, client side? Like we've seen, for example, there is an ambition with our government to rule out fossil fuel cars within 10 years. So do you think there's going to be a real kind of uptick in more sustainable products that we're then going to be all scrapping for the advertising accounts for?
I think it's important that everyone uses their kind of their purchasing power. If we actually gather around brands which have that purpose, then change can happen really quickly. And it's encouraging to see statements from the government saying commitments. I mean, we personally as a company are committing to be net zero by 2025. There are brands which are making big statements, aren't they? Whether it's Brewdog in the brewing industry. Yes, the government made the commitment around electric mobility, but also our homes. The boilers and the way we generate heat, the insulation in our houses. Yeah, looking at your car in the way you drive, even to the food we eat. I think it's interesting to see how much Beyond Meat and companies like that, our KFC clients are playing with vegan and plant alternatives. It's really good to see, but it can't just be empty words. It needs a collective effort. And we've shown, haven't we, this year that those changes before maybe seemed like they'd be impossible. But because we've been forced to experience it, and we've probably found, yes, there has been loads of negative pieces, but there's been so many positives as well. I think the uptake in video conferencing has been part of that as well, hasn't it? People have doubted that you could work and make it and be productive using these kind of platforms. I mean, I've enjoyed cycling and walking more and not using the car very much. And I definitely don't miss the commute.
Yeah.
It does make you think about, large scale infrastructure projects like HS2, and the amount of money which goes into them, and whether that would be better diverted to broadband or an electric network to charge our electric cars. But
I think that's a point that someone I always go back to is Rory Sutherland. The point that he made was, if you compare the cost of a large scale national rail infrastructure to the cost of giving everyone a Zoom account for business, it would be a real fraction of the price. And now we've seen that it can actually be done. Maybe that's the kind of thing that's going to happen, because certainly on our part, before the lockdown, as you know, because it's when we first came down to see you, we were down in London twice a month, always on the train, spending a fortune, but also, there's all the carbon associated with that, carbon emissions associated with that. Whereas now, I mean, I'm fundamentally a lazy person, so I'm just incredibly grateful that we can basically do this. Do you think we'll be doing this kind of thing on into the future, just instead of, flights over there for a meeting and over there for a meeting, just do the Zoom thing instead?
If you think about it, I mean, the cost of that flight, think about what else you could do with it. We're looking at our production kind of model as well at the moment, going, we're not going to have 5, 6, 7 people flying out to shoots. It just does not make sense. Where we need to, maybe one person, maybe 2 at most. But and we've shot, recent ads for the NHS. That was all done remotely. It was only in a West London film set, but it was a Saturday, all shot on Zoom. And I think if you've got trust with your production company and your director, and you've done a lot of prod and prep beforehand, then the quality of the work doesn't get compromised. But what you have done is reduced your carbon footprint and the impact on the planet. So I think the north-south divide, we talk about HS2 or the infrastructure of roads and rail. Surely this is a better way of us connecting and chatting now, So I think surely that levels the playing field, provided you've got a decent broadband connection.
It does, but and it also, there's two, because we're creatives, we can always look at things from a different perspective. One way of looking at it is that it's leveled the north-south divide because we can communicate via video conferencing. Another way to look at it is that you can finally keep us northerners at bay, and we don't need to come down and pollute London anymore. But
I miss that. So look, get back on the train. Or get on your bike.
I will, yeah. Cycle all the way down for charity. But, yeah, one thing that struck me, I don't know, again, I have never been rude enough to ask your age or when you got started in the industry or anything like that, but there were some of the people I've spoken to say, when they started at, Ogilvy in the early 90s, shoots in, let's say, Rio or, places like that in Brazil, you would take, production assistants, but also personal assistants, and you'd take the people who were on front desk, like you'd have a huge load of people going over to a shoot. And part of me got the impression that was, like you said, we've proven that we didn't need all those people on the shoot. And I have a sneaking suspicion that for a long time, that was kind of seen as a working holiday for a lot of people in the agency.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably seen as a perk. I think it's important for young creatives and people to actually get onto the shoot and understand how it works, but you can still do that via Zoom, or you could do it on more local pieces. So I don't think it excludes that from the experience. But I think it just, people are questioning it now, aren't they? Again, it goes back to the reset. It's just resetting and just thinking about the impact. And actually, you have got other alternatives. I mean, look at The Mandalorian, yeah, in terms of, I don't know if you looked at the kind of making of that kind of setup. But that is basically an Unreal Engine with a 3D modelled world using screens as a backdrop. It's kind of like the next stage on from green screen. The fact that's all rendered on the fly, it means their production timings come right down, and they're not having to fly people all around the world to go and do it. Yeah, absolutely. I think that is going to take off, that style of production, because we've got a partner that we work with, and he specializes in these kind of remote CGI suits. Everyone is basically in their own house with the full body thing on, and they're just being directed over Zoom, and their movements are being captured and put into this new environment. And so
I mean, more power to that. I really hope we can. I mean, doing more with less is the point. It's what we've all been trying to do, isn't it? And make things better with less effort. That's surely the long-term goal. But you mentioned something a minute ago and about this thing you've recently done with the NHS. And so, I'm unaware of the broader context of that. So tell us about the work. We'll put the film on now and tell us, how it's come about and what it's for.
It's for the NHS Charities Together, who are an amazing organisation. A lot of people will probably know them because Captain Tom, his walk, he raised 120, 130 million for but they basically fund the NHS frontline. So they really look out after the nurses, doctors, the volunteers, and to help supplement the NHS and look after those guys. So our Starbucks client actually came to us because Starbucks are one of the brand partners for the charity to help raise money this Christmas. So there are people like Unilever with Marmite, Kindred, the clothing company, and a number of others who are taking a piece of merchandise, so a gift, and then they are donating the profit from that purchase to the charity. So the whole platform, that's my alerts, which I should probably have turned off, shouldn't I? So the whole campaign is called Gifts Which Give Back, and the thought is all about giving back to those who've given everything. So our observation was, the NHS frontline have been amazing throughout this year. And, at Christmas, now's the time to really acknowledge that. So Michael and Philippa, one of our great teams, Iris, came to me with an idea. And it was basically about this old guy being rushed into hospital. It plays out in 3 acts. You see the great care. You see this bond between the nurse and this gentleman as he gets nursed back to health. This is all happening in the run-up to Christmas. In Act 2, we see him observe how she is treating him and everyone else in the ward and in the hospital, even the children's wards, looking out for them, really giving back. And then we get to the 3rd act where you see him, he leaves, gets home in time for Christmas. And then it's Christmas morning and we see the nurse who receives a present from one of the kids on the kids' ward, and the label on the present just says, "Thank you for everything you've done for all of us. Love, Santa." At which point she has this little kind of flashback moment, and we're left with the question: Was that Santa? And that's the heart of the film. It's gone down really well. It's made a lot of people have a tear or two. Nick Jack Davis, the director, has done a brilliant job on it. Everyone gave their time. We shot it on a Saturday, so it was all shot in one day. As I said, all over Zoom. There's an amazing film set in West London, which is all set up like a hospital. And all the crew kind of gave their time. Birdie on the soundtrack was just brilliant as well. So she had a track in 2011 called People Help the People. And it all talks about helping your fellow man. And it was just the perfect track. So her, the management, the label got on board, and she re-recorded an acoustic version for us, especially for the film. She did that at home, again, all under lockdown, and that's the soundtrack to the film. So yeah, it's literally launched today. It's been mentioned on BBC Breakfast this morning. Lots of influencers are sharing it online, and the idea is, watch the film, check out the website, and give a gift to a loved one, but at the same time, give some money back to the NHS.
Yeah, and Lord knows we owe the NHS. I mean, we've all been talking about it all year and just pouring out praise for them. But to bring a very case in point, very recently, it's there was half a chance there was a very strong chance that I was going to be doing this not from our office, but from my bedroom, because last night I went to get a COVID test and did the whole, it's like going into 28 days later, or the house in ET when it's all surrounded in plastic. Got the results 18 hours later, this lunchtime, and said negative. And so here I am. But I can't believe how quickly we've expanded the infrastructure and just how much progress you can make when there really is a strong motivation. But yeah, I suspect there'll be lots of people in the NHS on the New Year's honours list. I think the people also at Oxford and AstraZeneca, people who are developing the vaccine. There'll be just a huge laundry list of people who are unknown, unsung heroes. They should develop new sort of like military medals, but just for the medical people now. So, but it's great, so that you guys have got on board and you made this film to celebrate that. And also, didn't you say it was done in about like 2 minutes or something? You did, not 2 minutes, but
yeah. I mean, the timings were really crazy. I think from getting the brief, it was 4 weeks to actually end today. It's been a full-on production, but everyone's been so brilliant on the project, and the clients are just so lovely. And we had NHS advisors throughout helping us, making sure we were being true to the actual situation within the hospital and the ward. Everyone's been brilliant.
Great. And so that's what's the date now at time of speaking? I should know. It's the 8th of December. So that's this year in a nutshell. What do you think is going to be happening next year? You've alluded to some things, like you suspect that January, February are going to be a little bit more difficult than maybe we're currently taking into account, because we're all excited about vaccines and Christmas and stuff like that. But what do you think? Where do you think we're going to be a year from now? What's going to have taken place? We're not going to hold you to it.
I mean, I'd hope we don't forget, and there's been lots of really horrible stuff, but there's also been so much positivity. And I think the sense of the community, the improvement on air quality and emissions, let's really pull together and keep that going. And also remember that actually when lockdown happens, and I think you alluded to earlier as well, in terms of the constraint, that's actually the best time for creativity. I think when you're restricted, it's amazing how people pull together and find a way. I think we've got to keep true to that. If we just default back to how it was before, I think that would be the biggest shame. I think a sense of community and appreciating what the NHS have done, appreciating one another, I think is also really important, and our mental health, looking out for each other. Yeah. So I think if we have more of that, 2021 would be a good year.
Great. Well, I don't know if there's a good way to wrap up after that. I thought one thing that might be useful, and I am springing this on you because I don't think I prepared this earlier, would be to say, is there any work that you've seen out there in Adland from other agencies? Is there anything that really impressed you this year?
I mean, I judged the Clio Sports Awards. I thought the work Budweiser had done around the female soccer league out there was particularly impressive because of its purpose. It stood for something. And I think they were one of only 2 or 3 sponsors. If you look at the men's league, you've probably got every sponsor in every category. For the women's league, it was like a handful. So through their activity, they set out to find the future sponsor. So they used all of their channels. Budweiser were quite recessive in terms of their presence, but they managed to get 6 new major sponsors on board by the end of the campaign. And I think that I thought was really, really interesting, and showing the brand really, really standing up and following through. In terms of, it was actually last Christmas, from a music perspective, DEE and Mike Here and Mother doing Silence to the Critics. That was just a great use of music and made everyone smile, and it was a great insight around how you worry about hosting Christmas and being judged. They did it it's a musical, wasn't it? It's a modern musical.
Yeah.
Done in a really fresh way. I just think that's funny to think that was just going into Christmas last year, the year we've had. Now that idea of hosting Christmas is very different now.
Yeah. Do you have the same sort of warped perspective that I do, insofar as I feel like when I think back to March this year or February, that feels like a long time ago. When I think back to November last year, it feels like it's more recent.
Yeah. It is weird, isn't it? And I think that's the cabin fever part of it, isn't it? The fact that we've been in our homes more, and it's felt more like Groundhog Day, I think. So that has, in many ways, compressed the time. Yeah. When I was back at the amount of work we've generated, it feels like it's 2 years worth of work. I'd kind of say us at Iris, we've probably had our best creative year in a very weird way. It's been tough, but creatively, I look at the output, I go, I've lots to be proud of.
Well, I look forward to the quality of your work deteriorating when you get back in the office then.
the lunches and the chats. Yeah, we'll see.
That's one thing, actually, just before we wrap it up. What's a lot of people have said the disadvantage during the working from home is people coming into the industry during the working from home era, because there are things you pick up from people next to you and seeing stuff happen, and the atmosphere of the office. Is there, have you noticed any particular drawbacks and things that we need to rectify if we're going to be doing more of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually going. Another piece of work actually, but the Barclaycard, we were doing some stuff around music talent, and they're a big sponsor of the music festival scene. Obviously, with all of the festivals on hold, all that sponsorship money was kind of it was going to be retracted. So we had an opportunity to create a branded content series, which the guys recorded down at Abbey Road Studios. So we had Fern Cotton present it. It's a really simple idea. You get the big named act to then form a cover of the supporting act. So the new young up-and-coming talent got their song performed by the big stars. So they had the Kaiser Chiefs, Mabel, Bastille, Lewis Capaldi all play those bits. And I thought that was a really interesting way of actually giving back. So Barclaycard used their media spend to then push out those performances. Channel 4 took on the piece as well and created a 1 hour special. So got out on broadcast TV. And even though the festival scene wasn't happening, there was still a way of actually using the digital channels to give people a platform. I think from young creative talent, I've probably had more kind of one-on-one kind of sessions with more teams talking about their books, talking about their work. And I think we've seen that across the business. We've now got to follow through next year as hopefully the economic situation picks up and there will be opportunity to be able to hire people. So I think there's lots of talent there. There's probably lots of connections, lots of mentoring going on. But what that talent needs is a job and prospects. So I think that's going to be a big focus for us next year to make sure we're supporting those guys through internships and longer term kind of contracts and trying to help give them the opportunity, just as we've done the music platform.
Brilliant. Well, I will hit that record stop button there.